Alex, always a pleasure, sir, to speak to you. But look, you are now Professor at the European University Institute. Why on earth do you want to go back into politics, Alex?
Good question. I guess there's a balance between freedom and responsibility. I felt I had done my duty as Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, and other things. But I have to admit that having been in freedom for 7 years and then Putin and Russia attacking Ukraine pretty much changed the scenery. And I hope that some of the expertise that I've acquired over the years might be useful for Finland in this rather tense geopolitical situation in this neck of the woods.
Alexander, it's Sylvia here. Good to see you again. I would like to ask you about this new world order that you've described. You know, in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, you've said that essentially we have a divided world split into two. Based off of that, what do you think will be the biggest challenge if you get this role as president of Finland?
Well, I'd actually like to push it and say that we have three spheres of power. You just mentioned in your clip there BRICS. So my argument is that you have the global West, which is essentially about 50 Western liberal democracies. We want to preserve the current liberal world order. Then there is the global East, which is driven by China and then, of course, supported by Russia and about 25 other countries. They want to change it. And in my mind, it's going to be the third sphere of power, the global South, roughly 125 countries, that is going to decide the direction in which the world order goes. I think we will be living in a world of disorder where we have a lot of regional powers and then overarching alliances. So rather messy situation, which I expect to settle in about 10 years. This is what happens in world politics. At times there's a big change, and I think that change started in February 2022.
And of course, one of those big changes was Finland joining NATO. I was wondering, what do you think will be next for the defense alliance? Finland has joined, Sweden is in the works to join as well. What will be essentially the next big milestone for NATO?
Well, I think one thing that we need to finish now is Swedish NATO membership. And of course, a couple of ratifications pending. I'm not too worried about that. But I do think that one of the unintended consequences of Putin's and Russia's war in Ukraine is the rejuvenation of the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance, NATO. So it's gone back to its purpose from 1948, essentially as a repellent to then a Soviet threat, but now a Russian threat. So I think the key here is to make sure that all NATO member states do their part, whether it's defense spending or not otherwise. But I do think that our new allies are quite pleased with the fact that one of the strongest military powers in Europe, in other words, Finland, has now joined NATO. So in many ways, it's a win-win situation for both the alliance and, of course, for security here in the Baltic Sea region.
Professor, I want to bring up China because NATO has highlighted the risks of the mainland. But what we've seen, even with this de-risking from China and concerns of the West around China, is that it's not having any impact. We've still got saber rattling around Taiwan. We've had Navy patrols off Alaska, joint Navy patrols with the Russians. Is the West getting it wrong when it comes to China?
I hope not. I think it's very important. I mean, in many ways, we kind of have three pathways that we can work on together on this globe. One is competition, one is conflict, and one is cooperation. And the key here is that competition doesn't spill over into conflict, whether that conflict then is local, regional, or, God forbid, global. That's why I think it's very important that we don't sort of ditch the international institutions that have been there to try to preserve peace and maintain cooperation. So I think what we need to do is to have an open dialogue, obviously, with China, and especially between the United States and China, and then try to contain the situation in the more traditional international institutions, such as, say, the UN, which is there to preserve peace. So I am not too worried, but of course I am a little bit concerned.